This video is all about Pianosaurus, how he was introduced, why he had so little screen time, and the possibility of his return in future chapters or related projects like Project Playtime. We'll take a close look at fan reactions, dev comments, and the ways Pianosaurus could have played a much bigger role. If you're one of the many fans who wanted more from this musical dinosaur, stay with me. We're going to break down the entire story of how Pianosaurus went from a hyped-up new villain to a brief cameo that ended with him getting dragged away. The central problem is that Pianosaurus was built up to be important, but ended up having around 19 seconds of screen time in Chapter 4, Safe Haven. Many players saw promotional materials, cardboard cutouts in the game, and a short teaser video that made Pianosaurus look like a major threat, or at least a unique character we'd face more than once. Instead, he appeared quickly, then got attacked and seemingly killed by Doughy, the doe-like creature who took a more central role. Fans are upset because they feel teased by the marketing. Pianosaurus's design is interesting. He's a large dinosaur with piano keys from his neck down to his tail, bright colors everywhere, and a big grin made of keyboard teeth. He seemed like the perfect character for a tense chase or puzzle sequence. Instead, after months of hype, many people finished Chapter 4 in disbelief over how short his scene was. This led to debates on social media, some players calling him a waste of potential, while others hold out hope that he could come back. So the challenge is figuring out why Pianosaurus was included at all if he was barely going to appear. Did the devs plan something bigger and run out of time? Did they introduce him just to hype up Doughy? Or is there a plan for Pianosaurus to return in Chapter 5 or another spin-off project? We'll explore all of these questions, plus the official statements from the developers. Let's start by looking at who Pianosaurus is and how we ended up meeting him in Chapter 4. Pianosaurus is said to be a part of the Bigger Bodies initiative from Playtime Co. He's labeled as Experiment 1163, meaning he's one of the many toy-based creations that received an upgrade in size, and possibly some form of living tissue or advanced technology. His appearance is a big draw: green scales, multiple horns in bright colors, and piano keys across his belly. Some official descriptions mention that even his teeth look like piano keys. It's such a fun and creative design that fans were instantly excited to see how he'd fit into the story. Inside the factory, there are references to Pianosaurus through cardboard standees, little posters, or small teasers, signaling that he's not just a random throwaway concept. That's part of why people believed he'd be a big part of Chapter 4. Before Chapter 4 was released, the developers teased Pianosaurus in short promotional videos or images. One short video, which was basically a commercial for a child's toy, showed him in a playful light, playing tunes, and seeming like a friendly dinosaur. Then it glitched or cut to something darker, typical of Poppy Playtime's style. Many fans latched onto Pianosaurus as the next iconic villain. They imagined big chase sequences, boss fights, or puzzle sections that revolve around music or piano keys. Since we'd already had memorable encounters with characters like Huggy Wuggy and Mommy Longlegs, fans expected Pianosaurus to join that lineup of well-developed threats. When Chapter 4 actually launched, players discovered that Pianosaurus had a single scene. You see him feasting on something in the distance. You slip or fall into his area and he notices you. It looks like he's about to attack, only for Doughy to show up, restrain him, and drag him away. That's basically it. In total, it's around 19 seconds of actual screen presence. This disappointed a lot of people, especially those who wanted more time with him. Some fans quickly joked that Pianosaurus had more screen time in his trailer or ad than in the actual game. Others were sad that we didn't even get a puzzle or a chase with him. A wave of memes and jokes flooded social media. Some said Pianosaurus existed only to be food for Doughy. Others joked that the devs must have realized too late they didn't have time to give Pianosaurus a bigger role. There's also a group of fans that thinks Pianosaurus might be playable or might appear in Project Playtime, the multiplayer spin-off from the same universe. They reason that since he's a large creature with a neat design, he'd be a perfect monster for players to hide from. Zach made a comment on Discord, "Y'all really love Pianosaurus, huh?" This happened after Chapter 4's release and after many people expressed disappointment over how little time he got. That statement suggests the devs were caught off guard by the amount of love for Pianosaurus. Maybe they expected fans to focus on other toys like Yarnaby or the Nightmare Critters. Another dev mentioned that Pianosaurus wasn't even in the original story plan. They had a storyline featuring the Doctor, Harley Sawyer, and Dowie, plus other main creatures, but Pianosaurus and the Nightmare Critters were added later. This might explain why their roles felt brief or disconnected from the main story. Could Pianosaurus return? Some fans believe he could appear again in Chapter 5, possibly reassembled by the prototype. The prototype is known for collecting toy parts and messing with them. If Pianosaurus's remains were still around, the prototype could put him back together in a more twisted form. Others think there could be multiple Pianosaurus units. The idea is that Playtime Co.'s manufactured more than one toy of each type, so there might be another Pianosaurus somewhere in the factory. That would let the devs reuse his design without retconning his apparent death in Chapter 4. Another possibility is that we'll see Pianosaurus in tapes, Easter eggs, or as a cameo. Maybe Chapter 5 will have audio logs from the staff who created him, or some background about how he ended up as a test subject. Even if he doesn't appear alive, more insight into him could make fans happier. Huggy Wuggy, for instance, had a big presence in Chapter 1 and then disappeared, only to come back in certain forms or references. People were excited to see his cameo in later chapters. That kind of multi-chapter arc was missing for Pianosaurus, but it could still happen if the devs choose to explore it. Another example is Dowie, who got plenty of screen time in Chapter 4, leading fans to wonder why Pianosaurus was overshadowed. Some fans believe Pianosaurus was a late addition thrown in just to hype up Dowie's arrival, showing that Dowie can overpower even a large dinosaur. This might have been a quick way to make Dowie seem more dangerous. Certain fans on Twitter and Reddit have asked for a patch or update that adds more content for Pianosaurus. They want extra cutscenes, a chase sequence, or at least some puzzle involving him. So far, the devs haven't suggested they plan to do that. They usually fix bugs or small gameplay issues, but rarely add new major sequences post-release. Some also mention that Chapter 2 or 3 didn't get big content updates beyond bug fixes, so it's unlikely Chapter 4 will break that pattern. But the outcry about Pianosaurus was strong enough that a few people still hope the devs might change their minds. Project Playtime is the multiplayer spin-off where multiple survivors have to complete tasks while a toy hunts them. We've already seen Huggy Wuggy, Mommy Longlegs, and Boxy Boo as playable monsters. Some fans strongly believe Pianosaurus would be a perfect addition. He could have unique abilities, maybe involving musical sound waves that stun players. If the devs notice that fans really want Pianosaurus, they might create a new monster for Project Playtime. That would give Pianosaurus a bigger spotlight, letting players experience his design and abilities in a more interactive way. This scenario would help fix the disappointment. Instead of rewriting Chapter 4, the devs could let Pianosaurus shine in a new game mode. People who like him could pick him as their monster and chase other players around. One issue that might hold the devs back is the risk of overcrowding the game with too many major enemies. Chapter 4 already introduced multiple characters: Dowie, Yarnaby, Pianosaurus, the Nightmare Critters, and more. Some fans said it felt rushed. If Pianosaurus came back in Chapter 5, that might mean the devs have to juggle even more characters in an already complicated storyline. But if the devs handle it well, they could give each character a small but meaningful role. Maybe we see Pianosaurus in a secret area or puzzle, or we fight a partial mechanical version of him. That might satisfy fans who want closure or a chance to really fight him. In all this debate is the scene where Pianosaurus runs at us, looking like he's about to become the next big chase, only to be taken out by Dowie. That's the entire confrontation. We see him get pulled away, presumably eaten or destroyed, and we're left with questions. For many players, that was a shock. They'd spent time seeing teasers, hearing rumors, and imagining how big or small he'd be. Then, in less than half a minute, he's gone. This moment shaped the entire conversation. It's why hashtags like Justice for Pianosaurus trended in some corners of social media, and it's why fans started demanding an explanation. Some took it as a comedic moment, joking that Pianosaurus was only introduced to show how strong Dowie is. Others were genuinely upset, saying they felt misled by the marketing. The official statement from the devs was basically a casual remark. "You guys really love Pianosaurus, huh?" That single line showed that they might not have expected such a strong fan reaction. In the end, Pianosaurus represents a clash between fan expectations and developer choices. On one hand, we have a fresh, creative design that fans instantly adored. On the other hand, the story and game length might not have had space for a full storyline about a musical dinosaur. The short cameo was enough to showcase his design, but not enough to build him into a meaningful threat or ally. Fans keep hoping that the devs will bring him back, either in Chapter 5 or through Project Playtime. Maybe we'll see more about Experiment 1163 and learn how the scientists at Playtime Co. tried to merge a dinosaur toy with living tissue. Maybe we'll discover that the prototype has been collecting Pianosaurus's remains for a horrifying new experiment. Or perhaps we'll get a tape explaining who created him and why. For now, though, Pianosaurus remains one of the biggest missed opportunities in the series, at least in the eyes of many players. The game teased us with a bright, colorful dinosaur who had potential for epic chase scenes or comedic musical moments. Instead, we got a 19-second cameo and no real explanation beyond that. The developers' casual reaction suggests that maybe they just didn't think fans would latch onto Pianosaurus so much. People in the community, however, still talk about him, draw fan art, and create memes. He's become a symbol of how a short appearance can spark huge interest if the design is unique enough. Now it's up to Mob Entertainment to decide if they want to answer the demand. They could keep ignoring it and let Pianosaurus remain a footnote in Chapter 4's story, or they could give him a second shot, letting him show up again in some form. If they do, it might please a lot of fans who feel this colorful dinosaur deserves more time to shine. If not, Pianosaurus will go down as one of the shortest-lived but most remembered characters in Poppy Playtime. No matter what happens, the situation highlights how fans sometimes love side characters more than the creators expect. It also shows the risk of introducing new creatures if you don't have the storyline space to give them real impact. Chapter 4 was already packed with new faces, and maybe Pianosaurus got lost in the shuffle, or maybe that was the plan all along. Give him a short cameo, then watch the community react. If the devs do want to bring him back, they have a few ways to do it. They could give us audio logs explaining he's still alive, or create a new version of him for a cameo in Chapter 5. They could even drop him into Project Playtime as a fully developed monster with special powers. A big reason to do that is all the positive feedback around his design, plus the potential for unique gameplay mechanics. Ultimately, the future of Pianosaurus is uncertain, but fans remain hopeful. They see him as a diamond in the rough, an idea that wasn't fully explored. Some people are fine with him staying gone, feeling that it was a funny twist. Others want him to become the next big villain. Only time and official updates will tell us if Pianosaurus is truly extinct in the Poppy Playtime world, or if he's just waiting to make a bigger comeback. Subscribe for more.